got this.
And I don't know if it's recording to where it's recording to, hopefully to the cloud, but we'll see. Maybe recording to my, what we'll see. Usually it asks me, are you recording to the cloud? There has been an update to Zoom since I used it yesterday. Well, I used it on my computer yesterday, but there's definitely a change on the phone. It's great. Fantastic. So let's welcome. That's good morning. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. It's
Hi.
it's Debbie and Cassandra here. We're doing our Divine Feminine series. We're moving on, and now we are at this beautiful space and place of Mary Magdalene. And Cassandra wanted me to share a photo, so let me share this photo. Can you see that photo?
Yes.
There we go. So I'm going to just zoom in on this a little bit, just so we can see. And you said, where did you say this mosaic is?
In a monastic temple in Israel in Beit John. I could be butchering the name of the place exactly,
Okay.
but it's not open to the public. But it is a mosaic on the floor that depicts Jesus as a sun, what looks like a sun god, and Mary as the moon goddess or his companion. And in the 12 people surrounding them are the 12 disciples, as if they are part of the zodiac. So it actually talks
Very
about the zodiac,
interesting.
but it puts the disciples in place of the constellations or in place of the names. So these names are in Coptic, I believe. And in that Coptic, it says like Capricorn, but it shows a different apostle instead. So
Mm.
figures are similar to what we see in mysticism, as opposed to just Christianity, which I thought was really neat to find that these were in a Hebrew Christian and like antiquity type of group that was almost right after Jesus had been resurrected. So this is what Eastern Christians also seem to follow, was that this idea of a sun god and a moon goddess together ruling over the three or their 12 apostles. So it's just an example of how Mary was looked at quite a bit differently back in, I think this was around 2nd century AD.
And you know, Mary Magdalene, just to kind of go back a little bit, and if you haven't heard of her, which I'd be shocked, Mary Magdalene very much was an apostle, a disciple, was right there, big in Jesus' ministry. And depending on the historical pieces you've heard or haven't heard, um, and then the things that the church put out at one point to really take away when the patriarchy and this male dominant society arose, empowering men and you know, demoting women. She just did not fit into their their story. And so, like, she went from actually being somebody, and you can share more of this, who funded a lot of Jesus ministry, who had wealth, um, who was very prominent. And then, of course, at some point, they were making decisions on what books would be in the Bible and not in the Bible because there were so many versions out there, and they removed anything that gave you the power, you direct access, that the kingdom of God is within you. And some of those verses still got into our Bible, but like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, all those were very much removed. And I'll let you share some of that history.
Oh, well, and also, hi, I'm Cassandra, and this is
Hi.
so I feel like we should. I don't necessarily have exact formal training in religion, but I trained to become a chaplain at one point in time. And because of my church not allowing women leaders, I had a conflict with that. And what I've discovered over time is that there was so much leadership in feminine qualities in the Bible that, like you said, were removed over time, or when they were discovered, like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library, the Gnostic Gospels that we discovered in the 1940s. The Gospel of Mary was actually discovered in the late 1800s. I think it was like 1889. I could be wrong on the date, but it was discovered a little bit before the rest of the Gospels were, and it was purposely left out, like you said, because it didn't agree with what they had already put in the Bible. It didn't agree with this idea that women were in leadership, spiritual leadership roles that not only led other people, but she was supposedly the spiritual leader of all of the apostles. She was the one that received information from Jesus that didn't go to the other apostles until it went through her. So it was left out of the Bible, probably because it didn't go along with these beliefs that the man is in charge or that the male is in charge always. And it doesn't help herd sheep as well whenever
Right.
you have this
And
idea.
so, there's such a beautiful, rich history that is so lost. And so here is what I'd love for us to unravel today is these myths from the patriarchal interpretation, mistranslation, and
Yes.
the actual intentional, as you're speaking of, diminishing of her role. So,
Mhm.
what are the biggest and most influential myths? Let's just get those out on the table right now and start taking them off one by one. And I'm going to start with number one, something I was taught growing up in the church. Mary
Every,
Magdalene was a prostitute.
exactly. Which was just a misinterpretation, and apparently it was added in the 6th century by Pope Gregory the Great. He
And
was
I don't even know if that's a misinterpretation. I think he purpose you're so kind. A misinterpretation. I think he I think he was very purposeful in saying, we don't know who this one person was who was this prostitute, but we're going to say that that was Mary Magdalene because
yes,
that fits our narrative, right?
yes,
So there is no biblical evidence that she was ever a sex worker or anything in that way.
not at all.
I mean, and if she was, good girl, but she wasn't. Okay, there's no evidence. The Gospels describe her as being devoted,
Hmm.
the benefactor, like she financially supported his ministry. And then, spiritually, the distortion was like take away her purity, take away her power, recast her as this fallen
Hmm.
rather than initiated wise, um, you know, woman authority in the disciples, right?
Yes,
And and so I I just am really shocked about that because I just thought, "Oh, that's what I was taught." And
yes,
why would my leaders of my church teach me something that's not true? And then they knew, and even after knowing, like
yes,
they know it's not true now, but they still teach it. Like they
yes.
know, but they still teach it. I'm like, what?
That she was a prophet
So
that Jesus took in and helped rid of her sins. But in reality, in especially in some of these gospels that we've discovered after the fact, the Gospel of Mary itself. I mean, it in the Gospel of Philip, it they talk about being a little bit jealous of the fact that Jesus gives Mary more power than he does the rest of the apostles, that he
yeah,
gives her information and more leadership qualities than he does the rest of the apostles. So there's also even a hint of jealousy in some of the newer gospels that we've discovered in the 40s. So, but all we were taught is that she was a prostitute that Jesus kind of let be a part of the table, but in reality, she was at almost at the head of the table, not with exactly right next to Jesus, but she was sitting beside him. She was
right.
his companion. So,
Yeah.
and we,
It just blows my mind. Like I just
yeah,
was like, and so you know, I just never, I didn't know that. I really didn't know. I thought, oh, she was. And I mean, I didn't think less of her for it at all, but people use that to diminish her, to say she was unpure, all these things. And her as a benefactor, a financial supporter, comes
mhm,
from the Gospel of Luke, which is still in the Bible. This part stayed in. And I'm going to read from Luke 8. It says, soon afterward, he went on through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were there with him, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities. And this is where they're trying to say Mary Magdalene, was saved of seven demons, and had gone out, and Joanna, and so they 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 right there are trying to put her in, and she wasn't originally. It never said Mary Magdalene. That was a add-on to fit the narrative they wanted. But I'm going to continue. And these women, the wife of Herod's steward Chusa, and Susanna and many others who provided for them out of their resources. That is the key. It provided for them out of their resources. So these were women who had wealth, probably had property, and
Mhm.
were supporting. This details doesn't say she's destitute or she was marginalized as later interpretations told us, right? She was
Right.
independent, she was resourceful, and she had a position of influence. So, that right there. But I love how they later threw her in as saying that she was, you know, seven demons had gone out of her. And
Hmm.
again, that we can go back and talk about that. Like, also, that's a myth. That's a myth,
Since
you
you
know?
pointed out the seven demons, I'm looking in this my New Interpreter Study Bible that points out that in that particular statement, summary statements like this one present what is typical and pull together motifs from that time or from this time. So it's really exactly what you said. It's a summary that was put in later. It was a summary that was added to make it seem like Mary was just somebody that needed help instead of
Right.
that was a companion and a spiritual leader.
Which is a huge myth that she was just this repentant follower, right?
Hmm.
Because she wasn't a background figure. She was one of Jesus' closest disciples. And when we say Gnostic texts, this is the Gospel of Mary,
Hmm.
Thomas, these were not put in the Bible, but were for many a time considered part of it, but then voted out. But she is portrayed as the most spiritually advanced companion to
Yes.
Jesus.
And she received in the Gospel of Mary, in these Gnostic texts, which there is a complete gospel guide written, well, edited by Robert J. Miller. If anyone wants to dive into all of the Gnostic Gospels that aren't included in the standard Bible these days, but it does talk about how it's almost a bit more along the lines of Buddhism, where we find awakening within ourselves now. Our soul ascends now while we're on this plane, not just when we leave and when we die, but we start that ascension with inner knowledge and inner spiritual work right now. And then she talks about visions of Jesus and what he tells her to tell the other apostles. And she was, even in our standard Bible, named the apostle of the apostles. So it was as if we've seen this woman that had significant power and mysticism, which we've talked about Jesus and his mysticism too before, but it's the idea that in her gospel she talks about receiving visions, so she has the ability to connect with the other world, with the other side, with the spiritual side, and pass that information along. And that's stuff that was also completely left out of our Bible, out of our standard Bible, is the idea that women and people in general can still receive visions from the other side and it be a part of God, that it's not all demonic, that it's not that we don't require these things to be pulled out of us, that it's just us connecting with someone on the other side, but it's connecting with God on the other side. And so they described her as someone being essential to the message of Jesus before and after his death. And she was the first to get his message when he was resurrected. She was the first preacher. He sent her on a message or on a mission to spread the message of him being the first one after his resurrection to spread the good news of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And those Gnostic also texts talk about her as a guide and
Mm-hmm.
comfort to the apostles after his death.
Mm-hmm.
And this balance of the divine feminine and masculine. And Um, Peter, who I'm not a fan of, I've said that before. Peter is annoying to me. Like, kudos to Jesus for putting up with Peter. Um, I He really did not like that. He said, "Why should we be listening to her?" And the others spoke up and said, "Because she's the closest to Jesus, the most beloved by him, right?" And like,
Mm-hmm.
he gave her the wisdom to share with us, and she never left his side. She didn't deny him. She stood at the cross. She was there at the tomb. Peter was not. Peter was hiding in fear with the other disciples, hiding
Hiding.
and hiding. He denied him, and then they were hiding after that. Um, and this piece of like her significance just comes to light in this, right? So um, she's the, again, like you said, the first to witness the resurrection. Jesus appears to her first, entrusting her to tell the others.
Hmm.
This is why the early Christians called her the apostle to the apostles. And that role is extraordinary because in the patriarchal context at the time, a woman's testimony wasn't even legally valid in that day and age, right? Yet
Hmm.
she became the first herald of the central Christian mystery, right? Of this resurrection. Um, Another myth that I just want to put out there, and people go back and forth on this, and and there's no proof either way, but there are people who believe it 100%, and then there are people who like would never happen. The myth that she was married to Jesus.
Hmm.
So this one gained a lot of popularity with the Da Vinci Code and other kind of speculative interpretations. There is nothing historical or really textually evidential, but
Hmm.
there is oral traditions that have kind of come down in the south of France that yes, they had a daughter together, that her name was Sarah, and that her and her daughter were in the south of France. It is possible that they had this sacred partnership, right?
Very possible.
The Gnostic writings really imply a deep spiritual partnership. Could there have been a physical? Some people find that complete heresy to say,
I,
but
I
there
think it's
is
Philip that does indicate there's a part that's been chewed up by ants, but there's a part that says that that Jesus often kissed her on thee, and the
mouth.
implication is mouth.
Yeah.
But it was,
Yes.
as old text can be, destroyed a little bit. So it's
Destroyed a little bit.
why,
Didn't.
which
Yeah.
which leads to some of the stuff that you're talking about. Whereas like the Da Vinci Code was taking that information, so that was where some of it
Yes.
from is the implication.
There are some that definitely believe that to be a truth and some that don't. And
Mhm.
there's really mixed evidence in that area and it's kind of speculative but very well could be. But at the very least what I take from it and what you see even the mosaic that you shared, right? The mosaic that we shared at the beginning is that they are a representation of that divine union of the masculine and feminine. And so, even whether it was a literal, physical, whatever, they still were that symbolic, sacred partnership, right?
And equality in
Yeah.
equal partnerships.
Yes.
They were standing next. He wasn't alone, and then she was in the background. They were standing next to each other. One was the sun, one was the moon, both being necessary for the world to work. So it's like, and in some of the Gnostic texts, it talks about how the soul doesn't have a gender. The soul itself is not tied to a man or woman. That it's on its own without having an actual gender attached to it. So having those spiritual leaders means that they are equal, that their souls are equal, that they are just a part of the world working in this way. So it's like we see that there's more equality even back then. And at
Right.
a point in time, like you said, with the rise of the patriarchal society in general, but we saw it in governments and we definitely saw it move through religion. But even that mosaic indicates that at one point in time, we weren't looking at women as unnecessary or unable to lead. We were looking at them for leadership too. Like you said, being a benefactor, women had to have something in order to be a benefactor. You can't just pull something out of nothing. So
Right.
so there was a little bit more power to women back then, and then it just changed over time with interpretations and with this priestly writer that went in. I think it was like the 14th century that went into the Bible and kind of added and removed God knows what. So
Yeah.
even sounds like he was a fan of Peter's for sure. I think Peter got to shine at that point in time. But outside of that, things have just been changed and morphed over time so that we've lost the idea that women are powerful spiritual leaders, which also means that women are powerful spiritual leaders of themselves. So if the Gospel of Mary talked about finding inner healing, you do it to yourself. You don't seek it out through other people or through priests. So, of course, they wouldn't have included that in the Bible, too, because that implies that you can find this healing on your own, that you can find this healing. I mean, obviously we need community and we need other people, but it's that power.
But the
And
machine and the power and the control that they had over the people would not exist. And
exactly.
and the money that the church held and the amount of property and influence that they held. Another myth that her teachings were, that she's a heretic and it or they're heretical,
Yes.
heretical, because or suppressed
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't true. They were removed, it's heresy. That's the word I'm looking for, heresy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the truth is, let's think about this. Her teachings were suppressed because number one, like you just said, that direct connection. She
Yes.
didn't teach you needed to go outside yourself. The
Uh-huh.
authority of your inner experience, and you had a direct connection to the divine, God within you. And Jesus taught this too. It just goes right along with her teaching. The authority of your inner experience and then the spiritual quality. Those are all things that people didn't like. It is, the Gospel of Mary and similar texts were excluded not for lack of authenticity, but because they challenged that
Yes.
emerging church. It challenged its hierarchy, it challenged its control and spiritual access. And they didn't want to give up that control. And you know, that is what it is. I mean, and there's still an Ethiopian Bible that has all these books. They didn't exclude the books. They kept the books in the Ethiopian Bible. So,
Well, that's kind of in my research. Basically, it said that the Eastern traditions maintained this leadership within women. It maintained that women had more of a foothold in, taking care of themselves and being dominant of themselves too, without having to only follow man. And I had to reiterate or find it myself again. It was 1896 that Gospel of Mary was discovered, and I think it was 1940 40 something when the rest of the Nag Hammadi library were discovered. And so obviously by 1945 the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches, they were going to have an issue with going, okay, we were a bit wrong in what we've said. So obviously this is not authentic, or it was written too late. And even in Luke, it talks about how, I think it's in the beginning of Luke, but it says something about how other gospels have been written before this one. So many other gospels have been written before this one. And that was written in 2 AD, I believe, or like the second century AD. So Luke is writing, or these writings, oral traditions have been passed down and then written down. It was the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were around the same time as these other gospels were written. So when the church says, well, we can't add them because they were too late, that's also a myth. That's also incorrect, that it wasn't written at the right time, but because it was. So it seems like there were lots of excuses to not include it. And the excuses mean, well, we don't have to admit that we were wrong about anything that we said.
for sure, for sure. I did talk a little bit about her going to the south of France, and there's a lot of tradition in the south of France and places you can go within the south of France that recognize her. That that, and there's kind of like this mysticism that continues on, and esoteric teachings. And for me, the message of Mary Magdalene is the key that I want to leave people with today. I want people to hear the message that she says. So, imagining from what she taught and her role, what would she say to you and I today? What is her message? And this is her message that I would take away and want to share with everybody watching today is remember that your worth was never something to earn. You were
Yes.
born of the same light that moved through everyone, through her. And it's the same love that awakens the world. The journey isn't about becoming pure enough to be loved or about but it is about remembering who you are. There is
Yes.
no, and again, this is not what the church is teaching, right? The church, I going into church and saying every Sunday that I am a poor, miserable sinner,
Mm,
and that I am unworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And she's saying, "No,
You
you were
are.
born of the same light that has moved through all of humanity and the same love that awakens the world." So walk your path. This is the message. Walk your path with open eyes and heart. Open your eyes, open your heart. Let truth be your devotion, not the truth handed to you by others, but the truth that rises quietly in your own knowing. Because again, Jesus taught this, and she reminds us of this: the kingdom of heaven is within you,
Mm.
is within you. The knowing is within you. This is the sacred voice that they tried to silence,
Yes.
the one within you. They tried to silence your own knowing. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where, like, have your eyes open, have your heart open to receive this message and know it to be true. When you doubt your power, return to your presence. When you forget your beauty, touch the earth, breathe, feel the pulse of the divine moving through your body. You are not separate. We are not separate from God. God is
Yes.
within us. You are a living temple.
Yes. Yes.
You are, I am, we are a living temple. Forgive the stories that told you to shrink. Just forgive them.
Forgiveness. That's what I think of for Mary Magdalene too.
The divine would never ask you to be small.
Mm-hmm.
Your compassion, your intuition, your fierce love, these aren't flaws, they are your own ministry. Jesus taught, be the salt. He talked about the salt and the saltiness, and be the light under the path and guide and be a light. This is what we are to be. We are to be the light. We are to be the salt. We are to be these things to one another. And in love and in non-judgment,
Mm-hmm.
that is how we connect with one another. And this is where it's like an awakening moment, right? To know, okay, I need to question things I'm taught and not take them just blankly as I've been told. I need to start questioning things that give people authority over me, power over me, and really go back. What did Jesus teach? What did he say? And it aligns perfectly with her message. Like,
Yes.
awakening is not found in some kind of escape, it's in embodying who you
Yes.
are.
Yes. Spiritual awakening was on the inside, and then it came
Yes.
in our actions and in our deeds, because once we were awake in here, then we spread that awakening to other people too. And I think that was part of her message as well, is
Absolutely. And your light, when you feel like your light is dim,
Mhm.
then, that's again, connect with nature, connect with God, pull the light in, bring the light into your daily light and how you love. Let it shine in how you speak. Let it shine in how you see others. And that is heaven on earth.
Yes.
Heaven on earth is when you love others, when you speak with light and love and truth, and how you see others with loving eyes. Because you are a continuation of the path. You are part of this following, this this system. Like, the love is the answer. Love is like the central key force of it all. And the way of the heart, the way of remembrance, the way love is made real. Because love is really taught to us in ways that aren't that love that Jesus is speaking of and that her message is, right? It is it is sexualized, it is romanticized, it is something you just fall in and out of, and that's not love.
Hmm.
That's attraction, right?
Right.
And relationships, but love is a state of being, and God is love.
I mean,
Period.
Unconditional.
Unconditional love.
What I gathered from her stuff too is that she spoke of true unconditional love that wasn't based on, like you said, our merits, that we are already divine on the inside. We are already connected on the inside, that we can achieve spreading that unconditional love too when we realize it for ourselves. And that's, you're so right about even just getting curious about what we've learned so that we can kind of figure out what the truth might actually be. We seek the truth, we get curious, and then we come up with something that might look a little bit different because apparently back in a different age, they looked at it differently. And so we can kind of morph and change and figure out what the truth really was so that we can make a new truth for the people that come after us too. So when we spread this actual unconditional love, it becomes different.
It absolutely does. And we are not perpetually sharing the false narrative that we
Yes.
were taught. We are not carrying that down. And I don't know, I always vibed with Jesus' message. I did not always vibe with how people misconstrued it, how
Yes.
the church made me feel less, how the
Mm-hmm.
church made me feel dirty and unholy and to be self deprecating. And Jesus didn't teach anybody to be self deprecating. And again, this message of love, this message of God within, the kingdom of heaven is within you, and that connection to yourself as a divine being. Like, this is the message. Like, this is the truth. And it may it may not fit the narrative for the church. And that's okay. And that's where I part ways in that for me because it once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Right.
And once you start to question the things you were taught, especially when you see people who really are acting completely opposite, claim him, claim Jesus, claim his love, claim his teachings, claim him, but then behave in ways that is not walking in light, that isn't embodying love, that isn't speaking in love, that isn't looking at others in love. It is judgment, it is hate, it is unkindness. And it's like I don't even connect with that. Like I don't even want to put that term upon me because I don't want people to think that I have hate in my heart. And
Exactly.
so my goal in life is to be the light. And so I think this is why as I've studied Mary Magdalene and I have read all kinds of things on her, people who have channeled her and
Mm.
channeled her through their own connections to spirit and her, um, how that message, every time I hear any channeler or somebody who has spoken of her that way, it resonates with me, but it also resonates because it matches what Jesus
What you
taught.
just said.
And
Yes.
I think people have missed the point. And
Hmm.
and not not to start a whole nother can of worms conversation,
But that's
because
great.
we're talking on the divine feminine. But what is the New Testament mostly made of? Letters. Letters written by who?
Yeah.
Paul. But written by men, but a lot of it's Paul.
Very much so.
It's all these letters that Paul wrote in a certain time
Hmm.
to a certain demographic, to a
Hmm.
certain church having a certain issue within that body of that church body of that place.
Hmm.
And people have taken those things and have created Christianity a lot around Paul and not
Jesus.
around Jesus. And so that's a whole nother eye-opening piece to me of like, I really feel like people are really more about Paul and the Christianity of Paul than the
Yes.
Christianity of Jesus.
Yes.
And
And
that's a whole nother conversation, but it fits
yeah,
with this conversation we're having today because it is that belief system and that patriarchal system that has infiltrated into people's minds and thoughts. And they will quote him. And I'm like, but Jesus said something else. But they're like so hell bent, pun intended, no pun intended, hell bent on what Paul had to say.
Yes.
And
And
I'm like, but what did Jesus teach?
And even with all of everything that Paul had to say, Mary Magdalene, her name is mentioned the most in the New Testament of any other apostle. So even though we're listening to Paul's words, we also see that Mary was still so influential that you couldn't take all of her names out. All of the times that she was mentioned and all of the times that she was an important character in these stories. Because that's exactly what they are. They're stories, like you said, they're stories that are passed down, they're oral traditions that were written, they're letters that were written to certain people at a certain time for certain things that they wanted, that Paul wanted to be able to create
Right. And
churches.
then people yeah, and people take something from a specific society in a specific time, not even in today, and then they want to apply it to today. It's like, oh, you're so lost, right? Um, I've enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything we didn't cover we were going to cover? I
Don't think so. But I mean, I could honestly talk about Mary Magdalene for so long, just because even like I would highly recommend. Yes, take this unconditional love and this inner knowledge and this inner wisdom with us, but also check out the Gospel of Mary, because it is a bit different than what our Christian Gospels say, than our standard Bible Gospels say, because she also talks about different realms of heaven, that the soul ascends into different possible realms. So it's also the idea that maybe not everything that was written in the New Testament goes along with things that were written down for other gospels. So we can take our own truth from these things if we just expand and get curious about it. So that's the only thing I have to left to say about Mary, is that she's just a wildly different character than what we've been taught, especially that prostitute that I was told that she was in church, which is clearly not the case. If she was at one point in time even seen as a moon goddess to the sun god, the son of God, then there's a chance that we have kind of missed the mark a little bit with some of these divine feminine figures.
perhaps,
just
perhaps,
just a bit.
just a bit. Um, I um, I think I think the key that really matches for me, and I've said it a few times today, is how when I read what she wrote, when I read her pieces, there it has that Buddhist feel a little bit to it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But then I reflected it back, and there's a book I've been reading called When Jesus and Buddha Were Friends. Um, but it matches the way it matches with Jesus' message. So if I read this statement to you, this could come from the mouth of Jesus, but this is really from the voice of Mary matching Jesus, because they
Mhm.
are they are like the yin and the yang to each other,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
Remember, beloved, the divine you seek has always lived within you. Your love, your truth, and your light are the way home.
Yes.
And that just resonates. That
Amen.
resonates deeply within my soul. I'm curious if anybody in the comments here on the live with us has any comments or questions or anything they want to ask or thoughts that you could pick our brains.
Looks like Maddie did say it was very interesting. The Catholic Church missed the mark on her completely. And I
Correct. Agree, Maddie. And I mean, honestly, her message of it's within you, you don't need to seek anything outside of you, just takes all their power away,
absolutely.
all of their power away. Now, there's mysticism and there's people who have channeled her who say that she studied under the same studies as Mother Mary, that they came from the
Mm.
same like mystic schools, that they were taught under the same teachings. There's so many other like ways we could look at her and talk about her. There's the Sophia Code. There's really beautiful books on Mary Magdalene that people have written and taken a lot of this and shared, what people have grabbed. I'm gonna grab this. Hold on, as I lean over in the
And
on camera. Go
And
ahead.
we can dive into the Mary, that School of Mary too next time because we're doing Mother Mary next on December the 14th.
Yes.
So we can tie those in together and see what the similarities were in their teachings or in the news that they had to spread, which
I
I'm
think I I think I left it in my room, the Mary Magdalene book, because I was reading it, preparing for oh no, I grabbed it right here. Um, Mary Magdalene
yes,
Revealed.
yes.
Great book.
I was reading
Great
that as
book.
well on my phone though. I don't have the physical copy, but
Great book. And the author talks about, different parts of her story, of what she wrote. What I
yes,
learned as I love this chapter. What I learned as the burning bush. Mary responded, I will teach you about what is hidden from you. And that's in Mary chapter 6, verse 3. And it's like, gosh, people don't want people to know. They don't want to know what she had to share and say, right?
no,
Um, so anyways, there's
that
there's
gives
just so much in here um that I was like, this is just sounding so in alignment with what I believe and feel and know within my heart. And so I'm not here to challenge anybody's faith, but to say, question everything you're taught and find your truth. And what's your truth is might be different than my truth,
yes,
but be open and
you're
be willing to say, maybe I've heard the story wrong and maybe I need to study it a little bit more. But we can talk about the mystic schools and mysticism and talk a little bit more. I love me some Mother Mary.
yes.
Um, and that'll be our conversation in December. And this is going to get posted to YouTube. I'll put it up over on the thin line. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to put stuff in the comments, and we would love to answer your questions. If there's
Love.
questions you have on Mother Mary for next time, let us know as well.
And I can be found on TikTok at Kaleewa, Caleewa. So if you have any questions or if you want to just talk about this kind of stuff and talk about the research, I'm available too.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Um, I think we really unraveled some of the things that we know are completely erroneous about her, and shared what she's written and what is written and what is shared, and how it aligns for so many of us. So,
And how many new possibilities are open for us knowing that we have a different point of view for what she could have been and what we can take with us now. So
and what she still can be and the message she still carries for us. So,
conditional.
again, unconditional love. Let your light shine. Be true to who you are. Don't think you're less, because you are not less. Um, your love, your truth, your light are your way home. And Jesus said, God is within you
Our
and
soul is.
heaven. Yeah. So it's there. Oh, awesome. Great conversation. I can't wait to talk about Mother Mary. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you guys for joining us. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys.
Bye.